Welcome to Colors of Awakening. Recording from Belize, I am your host, Genevieve. In the episode you're about to listen to, I am joined by someone whose story resonates with the very core of our podcast, and in ways that inspire me deeply, my daughter, Salomee. But it's not our familial connection that brings her to sit with me. Rather, it's the extraordinary harmony she consistently recreates between her path as a scientist and her spiritual development. At the young age of 25, Salomee has embraced a journey filled with profound self-discovery, a path that many might only embark upon later in life. As a medical student, she has immersed herself not only in the world of science, but also in the realms of mindfulness and inner growth. Her ability to bridge these two realms offers insights that are both universal and deeply personal. I believe that Salomee's dedication to meditation and the insights she's gleaned from living in diverse cultures like France, the US, Israel, or Italy make her perspective unique and enlightening. It is a privilege to invite you into this intimate conversation. Enjoy. Salomee, thank you for agreeing to sit and share with us today. You grew up in a multilingual environment. How did this shape your worldview? And can you tell us if speaking in multiple languages involves thinking in different perspectives? I think this will have you tell us a little bit of your background.
I grew up most of my life in France, but I left with you for the US when I was 5 for a year. And then I came back to France at 6 years old. I left France for Israel when I was 17. And I lived there for 4 years with you again.
Speaking in different languages, does it involve thinking in different perspectives as well?
I think mostly, I'm not sure about this, but the other way around is true, meaning there are certain things that are easier to say in certain languages. I think you share the same thing that speaking about feelings is sometimes easier in English. A lot of the times it's easier, even though French can be a very poetic language and some things are more direct in English. Maybe also because there's so much of our culture that is influenced by English, so many movies and songs, things that relate to feelings. Yeah, Hebrew is even more extreme in that there's you cut through the politeness and you go more like straight to the point, especially because it has much less vocabulary than the other languages, and also because of the Israeli culture that is more like direct.
Do you think the language is a part of it, that people tend to go to the point rather than putting all sorts of flower around?
Yeah, for sure. I think it is also the fact that there is no polite form in English and in Hebrew. Like in French, we have the polite way of addressing someone and the informal way. Yeah, in Italian as well, they have it. And that makes it a lot more complicated. Like right now in Italy, I'm living in Italy for 6 months, and it makes it difficult to address people because you have to master a different tense. And you never know where the distance is. Even in French, you're never sure when to use it, when not to use it. So it creates this distance a little bit between people, I would say.
I do think my personality tends to change to be influenced by the language in which I express myself. I think when I express myself in French, I might be a bit harsher than when I express myself in English, I mean. On a completely different topic, we're going to talk about meditation. And I would like for you to share when you started meditating, and if you could tell me how it has influenced your journey, how it has impacted your life to meditate.
So I started learning about meditation when I was about 16. It helped me realize a lot about my relationship to my thoughts, and like it came at a time where I had trouble being in my own head. I guess that comes with the age and also with specific issues that I had. And
how old were you?
About 16.
Okay. You started meditating at 16 years old.
Yes, I think that the philosophy behind behind mindfulness meditation gave me something I was really looking for, is the idea that you are not your thoughts, that your thoughts are not reality, that there is a gap between what happens in your head and what happens in the outside world. Like, um, you tend to think that whatever comes through your mind defines you. And I think it helped me realize, first, like, reading people telling me you're not defined by the thoughts that you have, even if you have difficult thoughts, you don't fuse with them. Just because thoughts are coming through your head doesn't mean that they define you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. It makes complete sense. Yeah.
First, reading people telling me that was the answer that I was dying to hear, because I was really afraid of the thoughts in my head. I was really afraid that it meant I was a bad person if I had bad thoughts, and focusing on them made them even worse. It's a vicious circle. Like, you try to avoid the thoughts and they end up growing and taking more space. First, reading people saying this is not who you are, you're not defined by your thoughts, was the first step. And then experiencing it over and over, realizing that when I have thoughts that bother me, and I'm talking about mental issues now, I don't want to go too deep into the details, but mental health issues, experiencing the idea that when bad thoughts are coming through my head, I can just relax instead of tense over them, was a huge step in helping me grow through really hard mental times.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just a practice that helped me through this.
So was consistency the key? Like, or did you find some spontaneous relief in some of those meditation? What kept you going? Like, did you have enough spontaneous relief so that you would be encouraged to keep going, or how did this work?
I was trying to look for answers without daring to talk to anyone about it, which is always a very lonely time and a very difficult time to go through. So yeah, definitely I tried. I think the first thing that happens when you start meditating is the immediate benefit is that you feel more relaxed. And that's already something. That's something that you can feel pretty quickly. It takes, yeah, not a long time, but it takes practice to get to deeper benefits. And also it takes if you're meditating paradoxically to get benefits, it's kind of difficult to get there.
So what you're saying is very important. Actually, the goal of meditation can impact the ability to meditate, which is kind of a very difficult thing, because how many people are actually starting meditation in order to bring peace into their lives? No matter what the goal is, at some point you will have to get into the meditation, forgetting and leaving aside whatever motivation, attachments, surrounding.
Yeah, perhaps it's more like this. I mean, it's very hard to get into anything without expecting results, without expectations. But it's just the idea that mindfulness meditation, at least, like, is about the present moment. So in the end, when you're meditating, you're not expecting to get at this moment enlightenment. It's very trivial as an exercise in the end. It's just being here, just being present to what's happening around you. And what's happening around you is usually very ordinary. It's just daily sounds and life, but it has a different quality when you pay attention. It seems like your senses are a little bit more awake simply because you're there in the moment. Meditation also really helped me in other ways. It helped me deal with pain.
Physical pain?
Physical pain. Emotional pain, I kind of touched on that. It relieved me enormously in difficult times. I felt like I was going crazy, and it helped me take some distance with my thoughts and realize that it is manageable. So that was huge on an emotional point of view for me. But also, yes, with physical pain, I realized when I broke my leg a few years back that it definitely helped me stay in the moment, stop my mind from going into panic mode, and be more in the specifics of what I have to do in the moment.
I remember when you told me about your experience of the ride in the ambulance, and you told me that for once you weren't the medic on the side, but you
Yeah.
were the one in the bed in the ambulance, and you told me, I don't think I could have done so good if didn't meditate in my life before. I remember that you described to me that you looked at all the trees and sky that you could see unfolding in the little upper window. I remember you describing that and saying like it.
Wow, yeah, you remember
Oh yeah.
more details than I do.
Oh yeah, and you were. It was a big moment for me. I was terrified to being so far away. When you were in France and I was in Israel when this accident happened, and when I found out afterwards that and you could talk to me and tell me about the whole event. It was quite amazing to realize how much peace you were capable of bringing into the traumatic and very difficult event. How much peace you were capable of bringing and focusing and breathing. So do you recall any of this at all? Like the details, I mean.
Yeah, I definitely remember details. I remember the pain, and I remember that I laughed even at times, you know?
You mentioned that. You laughed with the medics.
Yeah, with medics. And even by myself, I had my inner joke at some point. And the thing is, it's weird to think that focusing on the present moment in this instance would help, because our first instinct is to go away when there's pain. And if the pain is too great, that is absolutely a valid. I'm not giving anyone advice on how to deal with their pain, but it's just the idea of meditation is that you don't shy away from the pain. And something important that it teaches you is the difference between suffering and pain. Sometimes when you try to avoid it, and we do that a lot with emotional pain, when you try to push it away and to ignore it in so many different coping mechanisms, then you're suffering more somehow. The suffering is...
The resistance to the pain creates more.
Exactly.
It reminds me of our, I think what we called our Bible, and how the road less traveled from Scott M. Peck begins, how the book begins with the first words are life is pain. And then once we get this as the premise, as the starting point, then when this is accepted, when we can start to actually deal with it and live in acceptance of the pain and find happiness.
Yeah, and realize also that there's more than the pain. So you realize that there's the pain, you're present to it, but then you're like, okay, let's make it an even bigger picture and let's stop focusing on just that. It's there. Maybe that's at the center, but there's also all those other things around me. And there are those sounds, and there are this, and you accept and embrace more of this present moment. And it helps, I read that somewhere, it helps dilute the pain into other things and realize that, yes, there's pain in the world, but there's also...
Christophe André, you're a big,
Yes.
You're a big fan, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, the dilution has helped me. I remember that in some of my crisis moment with depression, you actually brought this concept of dilution back to me, and you reminded me that I can let the vase, I can let other things, even if the vase, my vase,
Yes.
emotional vase, feels completely overflowing, to just allow other things to come in, such as sounds and smells and everything that I can feel with my senses. And it's not exactly to distract yourself from the pain, but it is to allow other things to come in the vase and make the painful liquid of my vase less concentrated. And then, yes, the pain actually does become a bit more manageable for a moment. And then it's a matter of allowing this again and again, over and over, right?
Exactly, yeah.
So our conversations about science and spirituality always inspire me. I feel that I'm really, really blessed that I can entertain this kind of moments of conversations with my own child. And I want to ask, how do you harmonize this contrasting aspect of your life? How do you harmonize them, knowing that you are a scientist or a scientist in the making, if you would prefer, and this aspect of your life of meditation? How do you bring the two together? Is there an harmony between the two, or is there even conflict between the two, science and spirituality?
There's no harmony.
There's no harmony?
I'm kidding. No, I'm kidding. No, but it's it's difficult at times. On some things, it's easy to rely on science, like meditation has been proven that it has beneficial effects. It's used in some hospitals. So that's not difficult. But the more I go forward in my studies, the more I feel like I don't know, in a way. The more you learn things, but at the same time, you realize that, well, science is about proving everything.
Proving.
As a medical student, you just accept facts because you don't have time to check everything. When someone asks you a question or tries to challenge it, sometimes you realize that you just accepted things because they're science, which kind of defeats the idea of science, just accepting it. Does that make sense?
Right, totally.
You just have to rely on hearsay a lot, and you just have to learn the basics, but the basics are so big that
you have to trust that you understand properly the account of the one who tells the experience in the book.
right.
You have to accept what is being told to you, what is being fed to you,
Yeah,
as if you experienced it yourself, so that you can keep going and make an advance and progress rather than stumping. Yeah, that does make sense.
yeah, there is a contradiction, and also there's this idea that there are things that you can trust and things that you cannot trust. So you'll be skeptical about certain things because they just don't seem very scientific. But then if it comes from an authority that seems reliable, then you'll tend to trust it. At least this is my experience right now, just because, again, I don't have time to check proof everything. I try to bring a little less skepticism.
So you try to be a little bit less skeptical, a little bit more open-minded, and this is how you bring some sort of harmony in those different aspects of your life.
This is how I try, yeah.
Of the significant moments and challenges in your life, both academically and personally, what stands out? Can you share some events and experiences that have shaped you? You did not have an easy childhood. You've been through some emotional rough patches, and today you seem to be a well-put, well-organized young woman. What brought this kind of change of trajectory? What built you up? What shaped you?
Yeah, I was thinking about that for sure. Different cultures shaped me. When I get to a different country, I realize the mechanism now even more when I'm in Italy, is that I try to adapt. I really have this need to adapt to where I am. I should fit in, even if I have a different culture and I'm not supposed to. But I try to learn the language. I try to speak the way people do. And
So is this flexibility or self-consciousness?
I think it's a little bit of both.
Okay.
It's the need to fit in, and it's also maybe the habit of being in different places. Yeah, I think I hold on to who I am at the core, but for example, being in Israel has brought me a completely different eye on nature. I was born and raised in the Paris area, where going on hikes is a little bit it's a little bit gross. At least as a child, it's like, oh, it's so much nicer to be in the city. And being around young Israelis who've been for several months in India or South America and who've traveled around, and in a very unplanned style of like just seeing where it goes, and that is just overall closer to nature.
The Shvil, even the national trail, is walked regularly, consistently by Israeli, whether it be, a few hours on a weekend or a 2-day trip. So there is a culture of getting out in nature that is quite developed in Israel.
Right. And the nature is gorgeous and very diverse for such a small country.
Your connection with nature has been shaped by your moving to Israel, by your living in Israel.
Yeah, nature and being natural also.
Authentic?
Yes, authentic, but even before that, just not caring as much how you're dressed, how you look like.
I don't know if it's a good or bad thing.
Natural side. Well, when I was there, it was very freeing. Coming from France, from the Paris area, where it's quite important how you look, being elegant, and it was freeing to realize that people in my class were just
They accept themselves. I think more than not caring is they accept themselves the way they are, man.
yeah, and it's also accepted in the society, which is an important one in the end.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, we have this Italian friend, Sylvia, who said that wherever she went in Israel, she was always the best dressed. Just even when she was just quite normal.
I do have some friends who did tell me the same thing about Paris, though. We were shocked, and they say, I went to Paris and I thought it was the city of elegance and the city of the fashion. I saw so many people dressed like moon and sun at once. It just did nothing match, nothing was coordinated, and people looked like they didn't care. I think it also depends on your means. When you go to Paris, your means also really probably determine where you will hang out and what you will see around you.
Yeah, also if you come to visit, you'll probably be in the more touristy places, which changes.
Which is not made of solely Parisian people.
Yeah, mostly not Parisian people, actually. I do see it in France, in the south of France now where I live, and in Italy here, there's this important style that I have a hard time with now because I'm struggling with those two personalities of mine, these two aspects of both wanting to be really natural and accept myself for who I am. And now there's this whole other culture that puts more pressure on being feminine, making up and looking nice and elegant. And
This is really emphasized in Italy?
I think so. I live close to Milan also, which is the city of fashion.
Right.
Yeah, there is this importance to what you look like. And it's also my experience. It's coming to this trip and downloading Instagram to share my travel with people, but then I get into Instagram and the toxic side of it as well. So it's really a mix of my experience and the country, but it's a struggle that I have right now. Finding my place as a woman between the different expectations that society has of me. The expectation of being very feminine and sexy and attractive and nice. And there's also this other side of my society, at least, of being more feminist and accepting yourself for who you are and wanting to be equal to men. So what does that mean? Should we be less feminine and take less time on our appearance? Is that not equality? I have a hard time.
I know that ethics and morals are not just dear to you. I would say sometimes they sound obsessional. How have your ethics and moral values guided your decisions and actions in both your academic and personal journey?
I think the why, to get to the heart of it first, is happiness. I realized that having meaning in my life, doing things that are meaningful, bring joy and bring something more lasting.
Satisfaction?
Yeah, satisfaction and doing something that contributes. I realized that I needed to have a job or most of my time doing something that I feel contributes in some ways. And of course, that is very large and it can be very different things. But I guess it fell right into place, the idea that I had the intellectual curiosity to know what the body was made of and how to treat it and how to help the people that are dear to me, like very close by. I was always, that I am always worried about, not worried exactly, but I want to be prepared for an emergency. If people around me, my sisters, you have an accident, I want to be able to react quickly and to have the right reaction. And the idea that there's something quite direct and it's a no-brainer that being a doctor helps.
Do you remember how far this goes back in your life? This interest in the relationship between mind and body in neuroscience first, I remember, and then more generally in medicine.
Well, I decided on medicine actually quite late in high school, but it came sort of naturally, just one piece after another. The intellectual curiosity for a lot of things, I was very curious as a child, discovering things. So also figuring out, I guess, how the body works was part of it. But the moment where it clicked, maybe in a more concrete way, is when I was in Israel and I volunteered in the ambulances.
Mm-hmm.
This is a moment where even though I didn't do a lot, I was in a small town and we didn't have that much emergency, that many real emergencies.
You learned some Russian words?
I learned some Russian and Arabic words. Yeah, because it's
in Arabic.
There are many Russian and Arab communities in Israel. So yeah. And it's important to have the few words, the satisfaction that it brought to even just contribute a little word or just, I don't know, be kind to someone. Being in the team that helps, even though I was a small pawn in it, it was amazing.
I think your interest for medicine came, as you say, late. It sounds a bit funny to say late because you're talking about end of high school.
Well, yeah, late before deciding.
I think your interest for neuroscience came much earlier than that. And I do remember you being fascinated by everything psychology or everything psychiatry.
Oh, true.
I can remember, I think, in your teens, and I wouldn't, somewhere between 12 and 14, maybe. I remember you studying the ways of Benjamin Franklin, reassessing consistently your own behavior towards others, your responses towards others.
Yeah, I've always been interested in psychology. First, for myself, I remember being quite young, even before I was a teenager, just worrying about the patterns in families that you reproduce.
We do have a dysfunctional family with a story of, child mistreatment. And so yeah, these were patterns that I myself, I'm still breaking or attempting to break.
Right.
So you were confronted with all this.
And you did a beautiful job at not passing on the child abuse that you lived through, the physical abuse.
Thank you.
Yeah, there were still tendencies that I was worried about. I was worried about you were abused by your husband and physically mistreated, who's not my dad, by the way.
Right.
And that happened likely to your mother before you. And so I was very worried. I remember being 10 years old and worrying about by just being attracted to that sort of men, that sort of guys. And I'm very much not. I realized that I'm very much into the sweet, nerdy guys.
we worked on that very hard. I personally feel that I've worked on this very hard on myself.
Oh, look at that boy! Isn't he sweet?
Yeah.
Well, I don't remember. Maybe it was subtle if you did that. I don't recall that.
Also even working it on myself and getting out of this schema that my own childhood had prepared me, conditioned me for. First, becoming aware of it.
Yes.
And I think it's very important, and I don't want to put that to put that as a weight on you as a child. I do think for a great part, my healing has been supported and helped, encouraged, stimulated, has been stimulated by the fact that I have a child, you. So there is a point when there is enough awareness as to what's happening. There's also enough awareness as to my own behaviors are going to impact my child. When I did realize that there is no do what I say, but it's only do what I do that will work, then I had to show up for myself more and more. It's been very difficult in the recent years. It's been tough, but it's been an incredible journey. And today I look at it with gratitude. It's real gratitude. It's been very painful, but oh my gosh, it's been a beautiful, beautiful journey of, the heart, the mind, the soul.
Yeah, I've definitely seen you grow over my whole life, I guess. Yeah, I've seen you grow over the years. I remember realizing, even in the 4 years that we had in Israel where we actually lived together, which we haven't a lot throughout our lives lived together. I remember realizing how you've had a different relationship with anger, especially. That was something that I very much noticed, how, yeah, there was this difficulty with managing your anger. And over the years, you've done a beautiful job at simply becoming softer, at managing it more in a way that was more constructive, where I felt confident enough to be angry too if I wanted to, I
Right.
suppose, and to which is really important, because as a child, I felt that other people's feelings were taking too much space for me to express my own or to let them out. And so I think it was huge that after a couple of years of living together, we were able to fight. I think this is great. This shows that we had an equal relationship, and I felt that
That's
we
right.
lived together. We were equal, whereas I remember in the beginning, I was just coming out of my childhood and the traumas that came with it. And I remember that I would freeze when you would get angry, and that would make you even more angry.
There was this ascendant that I had over you every time I was speaking, which really, really made me climb to the ceiling, because all I wanted was someone who would actually tell me, what is wrong, and I looked for that. Well, now you're giving it to me without a problem. At times, I'm like, oh man, I miss the other time, these old days.
I miss quiet Salomee. Well, too late.
Too late. Yeah. So, do you remember some significant challenges that you faced that challenged your ethical values?
Yeah, for sure. A place where I've been challenged a lot was the hospital, because you come in as a young medical student with all those ideals and all this idea of what you want it to be and how it should be, which is beautiful. But then you're confronted to the reality of the hospital, where people, it is their job, and I understand it more now. It is your job, and you're not perfect. So your relationship to people is not always perfect, and sometimes I felt that it was wrong the way we talk about patients. I still have a hard time hearing it sometimes.
I remember when I was hospitalized, we witnessed doctors not speaking properly to patients. And we did acknowledge, we could see that the doctors were overwhelmed by the amount of patients and the lack of medical staff.
Right.
But still, we were shocked, and we were just like dancing on our seat to know what to do, how to respond. Should we stay silent? And this is something that from very early you were being bugged by.
But, well, I suppose when you were in the hospital, I was already studying. Most of what I've seen in the hospital, the healthcare is great. The relationship is still very good. But yes, I have a hard time with sometimes the infantilizing or the distance that we put, even though of course it's necessary. But
Do you manage to act on it, on those feelings?
usually not in the moment, because there is a certain hierarchy that you feel that, you're a small student. I've tried in instances to do a softer approach, to have a softer approach, sometimes to like non-confrontational, I suppose, or just afterwards talking.
I do want to ask you a question. We might be running short in time, so I do want to get something about depression. You mentioned mental health before, and I want to ask how depression has different meanings for different people. Yes, but how does it resonate with you, both personally and professionally?
Well, professionally, it's interesting when you start studying psychiatry that depression is very, how to put it, is very chemical. It's interesting to see. We tend to think of mental health a little bit as something, not, I wouldn't say voluntary, but we do tend to think that it's controllable because we can't. And it's not, we don't see it. So we tend to think of someone that is depressed as, well, try harder.
Right.
And I think I tend to do that as well. But it puts a lot of perspective and softness, I suppose, to realize that it is a chemical imbalance and physiopathological pathways, and like there is a physical reality to it. And it's nice to remember that when we approach depression, that there is a part that definitely you can influence, but there is also a part that is not that easy. If I can just, it's just not that simple.
So, looking ahead, where do you see your path leading? And is it something ever changing, changing, regularly?
I see myself exercising as a general practitioner for now, to see a large number of different diversity, a large number of people, and follow people along for several years. And I want to include a bit of that diversity, I think, in my practice. I've been interested in those doctors that have a different language to offer. Like, I would love to have some, to learn more sign language, to make it more accessible, to learn more about the issues between medicine and the LGBT community, the special challenges that they face with doctors, and include that in my practice. And then with my personal life, I don't know. I'm seeing myself living in France for now, for the next few years of my studies. And I don't know. I could be living abroad. Maybe not. We'll see.
Okay. Well, what would you tell to a younger version of yourself? What would you tell young Salomee?
That it's going to be okay. To protect herself, to spend most of her of her defense energies in protecting herself and not protecting others as a child, for sure. I've actually talked to my little sister kind of as if I was talking to myself recently. So
that's beautiful.
That's what I was telling her, to just focus on protecting herself and bettering herself, which includes learning how to be happy, how to be joyful, what makes you thrive, learning to communicate with friends and have beautiful relationships, communicate your needs with the people who can accept it. You get this feeling when you have a difficult childhood that it's never going to end, in a way. And I had a very bleak idea of the future when I was a child, of something that was just going to be linear, and that I was going to carry the trauma, and that I was not going to do anything very bright. I would tell her that she'll be able to make her own choices one day. And that childhood is really about learning how to make those decisions.
Thank you, Salomee. Thank you for sharing your colors and your perspective.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for being that great friend to me. Daughter, you don't have a choice, really. but to be a daughter, but a friend. You can choose, and you're really, really this great friend to me, and I thank you for that. Thank you for agreeing to sit with me today and participate in my extravaganza and new adventures. Until next time, listeners, embrace the colors of awakening and let's find healing together. Thank you. Today's conversations with Salomee has been a journey into the harmony of science and spirituality, a reflection of what Colors of Awakening stands for. Her insights offer a unique and enlightening perspective that I hope has resonated with you too. From Belize, thank you for joining us. If you found value in our dialogue, please share it and join us for more on Patreon, YouTube, or any of our platforms you will find in the description. Until next time, embrace the colors of awakening.